Yeah, hello and welcome at the Daten-WG YouTube and podcast channel. Today with a expert episode again. International experts are invited on a regular basis here. And today I have Alexander Arvidsson, yeah, from Sweden. Hello, Alex. I've seen some
Hello.
talks of you actually, but for the reason, if anyone does not know you yet, just some short words before I start with your
So
talks
if,
and
if you
content.
don't know me yet, that's a great opportunity to run away. Uh, I'm Alexander, as you said. I come from Sweden. I've spent my entire career in data. Well, this is technically my second career because my first very, very, very short career was as a paramedic, but that was 30 years ago. And that is the only training that I have. Everything else I picked up on the job. But I started working with databases and I started working with like computers and anything that made sure that I didn't have to face people because I didn't like people. I didn't want to interact with people. I like computers. They made sense, even though I worked with Oracle. I did that for quite a few years, and then somehow I fell into data warehousing and more of the heavier side of databases where you have really large amounts of data. And one day, Power BI was a thing, and I thought to myself, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. I want to see what that tool can do." And that sort of kind of forced me to do more with people. And I realized it feels dumb to say now after so long that tech is cool, but people, that's where it's at. And I pretty much pivoted and shifted to looking at data in databases and computers from the perspective of business. And these days it's a tool, but it's not about the tool, it's about the people, and that's what drives me. So you probably find me talking about a lot of different things, both front end, such as accessibility and report design. And as I said before we started recording, I can tell you what to do. I'm not a very good report designer myself. But at the same time, I can also go toe to toe with data engineers and database architects and storage architects because I have such a wide field of work. That's why I found Fabric to be a really interesting and fascinating tool because it really encompasses everything I've done for the last 30 years. But at the same time, I pity the people that come in to computers and data today because going into Fabric and seeing Fabric as one tool, you're going to get a splitting headache because it is going to take you literally years to get to grasp with all of the components. So yeah, that was the short and skinny. I have a wife. I have 3 cats. I like to fly small airplanes and to small airfields and drink coffee. That's pretty much what I do.
Wow, wow, fantastic. So I already have some questions arising because really, as I told you, I know you more from the front end side.
Mhm.
I think the first talk I've seen of you was about like the untruthful like
Oh, you saw the
visualization, like
untruthful art.
yeah, like misleading visualizations.
Yep.
Something that it's really interesting in this kind of space. Even yeah, more modern AI tools with PhD degree can create very misleading bar charts these days. So yeah, that's interesting
Very,
part.
very much so, and that is my most successful session to date. I think I
Oh,
delivered it so it always gets developed over time, right? It's not the
mm,
same session as I did it the first time, but in its different incarnations, I've done it over 20 times, and I get the
oh,
same feedback every time, like, "Okay, this was awesome, but it was also scary as hell." Because that's my point. It is so easy to mislead with statistics and data. And since everybody and their cat is talking about let data tell the story, well, I'm sorry to rain on your parade because I'm here to tell you that the data is not going to tell a story that the person making the story didn't want told. So it's all about manipulation. It's all about There's no such thing as neutral data. It all comes down to the person behind it, and that's why I find people to be so fascinating in the crossover between computers and data, information, and people.
Mhm. Yeah, because I think people naturally also oppose data when it's like not stick to their beliefs. Actually, when it seems to be wrong, it's like a very old instinct in the people to refuse all data, and then they also refuse the data people and the data software, and start again with gut feeling, or in the best case, some extra stuff they made up themselves. So,
Very, very true, and that's one of the challenges I think with Power BI, because
yeah.
Power BI is a fantastic tool to visualize data. I've poked at most of the tools, and I would argue that Power BI is probably the most rounded and best. Tableau still is the best looking, but to paraphrase our dear friend of mine, Valerie Junk, it's a report, it's not an art project. So Power BI generally gets the job done. But you can have all the best data in the world. It can be perfect from a uh, both a technical perspective and a quality perspective. Not that it ever happens, but for the sake of the argument, it doesn't matter. If you can't make the data matter to your audience, if you can't make the data palatable to your audience. Like you said, people see what they want to see. And if you have a preconception that says something completely different, well, then you can't just show them the data. You can't shove the data like you made it into their throat. You need to meet them where they are and slowly bring them in. So Power BI is a fantastic tool to disseminate data. But at the end of the day, it's about making the data matter. And that's where the people using the tool come in. And that is something that I'm really, really interested in. And I do a fair bit of presentation skills training. And I also do a number of workshops on making data matter, for instance. And I just recently teamed up with Valerie Junk of the Netherlands. So we are going to do a making data matter session or early workshop, I should say, in Mechelen at Data Minds in October.
Oh,
And I
great.
highly recommend anyone listening to this to come attend because it is going to be great. Valerie is fantastic, and together we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had
Shameless plug.
the pleasure to meet Valerie at Color Cloud this year. It was also always a great talk with Valerie, and she was also here. So shout
Oh,
out
right, you had
to
her on
Valerie.
for sure. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Valerie is yeah, a fantastic designer, and she also, like you, composes like the back end and the front end in herself, and also went from back end to front end. But as you mentioned, so let's stay a little bit at the user side for now, because when you were asking, okay, you have to make the data matter, and things like the pyramid principle is not very new for slide design. Like pyramid principle, you have the fact, and you have some context, and then you have the details, like,
Mhm,
and not starting with, especially in Germany, many people like starting with lots of numbers and how you
mhm.
crunch them, and then when the people are already asleep, you get the final facts. And I think the one with the most endurance is the wins the race. But it's known. But for some reason, when it comes to Power BI and not PowerPoint, people are still asking, "Can I have a table? Can I have an Excel export?" So, what do you think? What's the reason for this?
Oh, that's a really good question, and, I think Valerie would be the better, person to answer, but my take on it is we are driven as a species, both from a desire to do the least work necessary and a dislike of change. That is a generally accepted state of being. So, if you're used to Excel, well, if you give me a new tool, I would like to tweak it so it behaves like I would expect to do
Mm,
because it kind of is a good analogy. I keep saying to people, nobody wants a data warehouse. And I will die on that hill. Nobody wants a data warehouse. Everybody wants the output of a data warehouse. Nobody cares about the tool. be it Excel, be it Power BI, be it Google Sheets, as long as you can do the work. And if you can do the work with Excel because you're used to it, of course you're going to want everything else to behave like Excel because you know how to do the work and you don't have to just spend hours and hours and hours trying to get your head around the tool. So that I think is the obvious answer. And the second one is we're not used to looking at um, visuals. It's so easy
Mhm.
to go, no, 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 give me a table so I can find the data. It's a huge step to go, here is a visual showing you what you want. You need to be able to trust the person that has made the report that what you're seeing is what you're expecting. And it's so interesting that you would say about the German way of giving you all the details. I had a really interesting experience with a colleague of mine, Claudio Silva. Claudio is from Portugal, and he is hands down the most skilled SQL Server uh, optimizer I've ever met. The things the guy that can do the SQL Server, it's not even funny. I thought I was pretty good. I don't even try anymore because he's orders of magnitude better than I am. He drove me crazy. Every time we talked, every time I described a problem, he went straight into the nitty-gritty details. And I said, I don't care. Give me the big picture. To which he smiled and went straight back to the details. I couldn't figure out why. Because in Sweden, we always start with the big picture because it makes sense. And then we go deep when you have an idea where all the puzzle pieces go together. Fast forward about a year, and we got a book at work. It's a bright yellow small book called The Culture Map. And it talks about how different cultures approach problem solving and arguing and all those things. And there's a section on Portugal there where it says specifically that in Portugal, also in Germany, in order for you to make sense and establish credibility, you must start with the smallest pieces and then you build your argument up. In Sweden, it's the other way around. So it turns out that it's not Claudio being difficult, or it's not me being dumb. It's about our different cultures not meshing the same way. When we realized that's where our different behaviors came from, that's when we started to be able to do a lot of damage together. And I find the same thing with Power BI or essentially any tool when it comes to visuals. You need to figure out your audience because what works in Germany doesn't work in the US, doesn't work in the UK, doesn't work in Sweden, for instance. You need to know your audience because your visuals or whatever you're doing essentially needs to be applicable to the audience you have in front of you, not some audience you might have in your head. That was a very long-winded answer to why do
Yeah.
everybody want the table? Because you need to if you don't trust the data, you're not gonna be able to just go, "Yeah, that's the visual. It says 14, and I need to think it's 14. Awesome." No, 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 I need to go into the data so I can find where did 14 come from. So I think it's about trust.
Yeah, I also have a theory on this cultural thing because, like in Germany or like also in Eastern Europe, when you need money, you go to a bank, and the bank is like they need some risk process and need some
Mhm,
details. And in the US, it's more common to go to some venture capitalist. You only need to convince one person, and then
mhm,
you can more tell a story, sell the idea, whereas in Germany, you like have to show the numbers to like more or less anonymous bank. And for me, this is also the reason why like parts of Europe are more like IBCS driven, more finance driven in all the reporting, and US is, for example, like more marketing and sales driven also in the approach of showing things. There are always exceptions, so it's also like
for sure,
no.
but that is a very interesting theory. I think it definitely holds water. Hmm, I might steal that theory because that
Yeah.
makes sense. I wanna look at it more.
Yeah, this. might be an idea behind it. Yeah. Okay. So, but you also like you started not with the front end, but also with the back end. Was it like an accident, like my colleague Michael, who was in a railway company, and then he downloaded Microsoft Access, and
Uh-oh.
then they made him the database admin for some years.
So it turns out that Access is a gateway drug for a lot of database professionals. So I think in my case, yes. So when I was a kid, I started with a Commodore 128 actually, not a C64, but a C128. And I started working, doing basic programming. I really enjoy the basic language. And then we got a PC, and while my brother, 3 years younger brother, he started playing games, I kept programming and, well, essentially breaking things and hopefully putting them back together. So we very quickly started to diverge. I started programming, he started playing games, and I quickly fell into this need for storing things. And I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember the INI files of Windows NT4, Windows N95, or those things. So text
It's really
files, key value pair text files.
yes, yes, yes.
I I sort of kind of outgrew them, and I started looking for another way of storing data, and lo and behold, Access 2.0. And I figured out how to use Visual Basic and ADO
mm,
and then OLEDB and stuff to talk to Access, and thus I could save data there. Then I went off to my military service. I was a combat medic, and I came out of my military service, didn't have any prospects, went to work as a paramedic for a very short while, and unfortunately, they just changed the system in Sweden, so you were not able to delegate medication to a paramedic. You needed to be a nurse. And I
mm,
faced either, well, 3 years in school to become a nurse or do something completely different. And since I really didn't like people, I didn't want to become a nurse. I fell back to my secondary thing, which was computers. And I think one of the reasons why the company that hired me, IFS, ERP vendor, I think I said the right things by saying databases, even though I didn't specify that I meant Access. So Access was my way in as well, and I went from Access to Oracle, which is like first you
mm.
bicycle and then you get a jet fighter. So it was a pretty steep learning curve, but it was fantastic. I learned so much in such a short time, and then I stayed with databases and so Oracle since 1997 and
Mhm.
December '97 and SQL Server from, early 1998. So I've touched every version since essentially, and yes, I am old.
Yeah, so I started with MySQL and like the open
Mm,
source, and then PHP MyAdmin was like a great tool I
yep.
liked back these days because it was comparably easy to maintain such a system and then concentrate on the contents, on the data.
Did you run it on Linux or Windows?
On Windows,
Oh,
mostly
okay.
on Windows, but
Yep.
then the Bitnami was there some later, and then they provided some images also for Linux. But most time I worked on Windows. I had such a Linux phase like in the end of the 0 years, and during studies. But then I went back to Windows when I need to work and need to excel again, and Access was
So,
still a great deal.
m my first the tools that I started working with were Unix. So
Oh.
True 64 Unix, Solaris, IBM AIX, those things really, really long time ago. And then I went to Windows, and I've stayed on Windows for almost my entire career. And now I'm actually running Mac as my laptop and my personal computer because most of my clients and most everything I do at work is cloud based, and it doesn't
Mm.
really matter what kind of computer I run. I just find that to be more preferable to Windows, but at the end of the day, it's It's just a tool, right? We're back to that again.
Yeah, I think I will stick with Windows as long as it's around, even
Mm.
if I like Linux. But yeah, I still see. So how was Oracle for you? Because for me, it's something like the enemy at the end, like because it seems so complicated to maintain, and I always want to focus like on the content, like PHP MyAdmin and Power BI and Access. Yeah, you can work more on the task and closer to the business and less with like maintaining and administer stuff. But Oracle seems to be quite the opposite, right? Or is it just like a rumor and it's very easy at the end?
No, no, you're absolutely right, because I do the comparison between Unix and Windows NT.
Mm,
You can't get into a Unix machine if you don't know how. It's just gonna present you with a prompt, and if you don't know how to log in,
mm,
you're not gonna be able to
yeah.
do that, which means that you can't get in and hurt yourself, because you simply
Mm,
can't get in. Windows NT4 was much more glitzy. It was so easy to work with, very graphical, and it was absolutely 0 problems with finding the biggest gun in the house and shooting yourself in the foot. That was by design. And fast forward 30 30 years, well, 25, 30 years, Oracle is extremely powerful. It is a very, very powerful database. It definitely takes some handling. I find SQL Server out of the box easier to work with, because you can pretty much just set it up and run. Same with MySQL. I mean,
mm,
MySQL was
yeah.
designed to be very lightweight and very fast, but at the same time, very, very capable. But Oracle takes some more tuning. If we say that MySQL is a Volvo, anybody can drive a Volvo. A SQL Server is more like a supercar, and
Mm,
Oracle is a Formula One car. It takes specific skills to get everything out of a Formula One car. You can't drive it on gravel, for instance. Um, it needs specific things to thrive, but if you can provide them, then it's super, super fast. Problem with Oracle is the company. I really, really don't like Oracle as a company. I find them greedy and difficult to work with. And
It's more
I
like
feel
a legal company than a tech company, I think.
exactly. Exactly. It's a company of lawyers that happen to make a database. That was not always the case, but it is now, and that's why I stay away from them. Like I don't touch it with a 10-foot pole unless I have to.
Yeah, and this is what I like about Power BI and also about Excel, because like the learning curve is quite, yeah, steady. So you can work very basic. So I even know people who cannot use Excel, like some designer friends or artists. It's quite impossible to think of people who never touched Excel, but there are people around. But it's still okay, like to add two cells, everyone can learn it. And they're at the same time, they are really like pros who build whole applications with Excel or build escape rooms with Excel and everything you shouldn't do with Excel. Have a
Just because you
gigabyte
can doesn't
files.
mean you should.
Yeah, but Power BI is, for me, it's also quite the same. You can start very basic, you can ignore many good practices, but then you learn step by step. And this is, I think, this is how software should be, like to let you in and to, yeah, guide you, and you get the knowledge when you need it. Because when I see, okay, the model is slow, I need to improve, I need to watch some YouTube video from Valerie to make it more performant, for example.
Mhm.
And then I know what I'm doing this for. And I do not need to have a 2 week course to learn some theory before I can actually start doing stuff.
In
This is what I.
general, I would agree with you. The flip side of that is when it comes to BI, we tend to work with large amounts of data, and that is going to hurt you pretty badly if you do it wrong from the beginning. I mean, if you create a data model
Yeah.
that is poorly designed, it is going to be very painful to redesign it. But at the same time, as you said, spending 2
Yeah.
weeks learning theory before you can put pen to paper,
Mm,
it doesn't work anymore. It used to work. I mean, I used to do training. Well, I'm still a certified trainer, but I used to train people like 5-day courses. That was the norm. That's almost unheard of today because people want stuff like much,
yeah,
much
small
faster. Yeah,
snackable Q&As, but to
indeed.
have it like 2 times a week, this is more effective, because you actually work at something, that matters for other people.
Indeed. And I think the whenever I draw out a data warehouse design, yes, I'm a fan of the multiple layers. Call it medallion, call it whatever you want. I don't care what if it's gold, if it's plastic, or if it's just raw base.
Mm,
You do you. As long as we have the same idea that we take data from somewhere, we stage it, we cleanse it, we refine it, and we move it forward. That's important for consistency and quality, but it's not fast. That's where you lose people. That's where shadow IT comes in. Someone goes, "Ugh, it takes me 2
mhm.
weeks to get this through IT." No, I can do it with Excel on my own.
Yeah.
You need to harness those people. That's where the fast track comes in. You need to be able to give them a tool where they can do test an idea fast. They can fail miserably fast, or they can come up with a great idea fast. But then have the processes to take that and put it into the big process, so to speak. So that's how you harness the excitement and fast
Mm.
thinking of your users.
But do you think that Fabric can overcome also this gap? Because at the start I was very enthusiastic from the start, and I still love Fabric very much. But I had some assumptions like, oh, that's so great! You can so easy shortcut your own lake house, and then I believed, oh, now every business user will just load the Excels into a lake house and make some shortcuts and create like some self-service in Fabric. But then I noticed, okay, it was still too far away from the initial setup to even for these users who already were used to use Power BI and like to integrate their Excel into Power BI. And I told them it's so much easier with the Lakehouse. It's so much more performant, so much more dependable. But yeah, it wasn't like a big success like from the start. So Fabric had definitely improvements, especially in the key user space. But I'm still working on it to convince like the majority of business people also to move their file shares and SharePoint folders to Fabric and yeah, really create self-service data management.
Fabric drives home one of the points that I've tried to make the last 30 years, that there is a reason why we call it front end and back end. And that is not for the back end people to look at the front end people and go, "Pff, that's is easy. Nobody cares about that." Or the front end people to look at the back end people like, yeah, we're not going to talk to that dude. It's not about that. It's because we have different skill set and we have different challenges. Power BI, well, let me rephrase. Fabric comes from Power BI. It was designed essentially by the same guy that built the concept of Power BI. This means that you need to look at everything from a Power BI perspective. That is good from the perspective of self-service. It's integrated, it's easy to work with, but it's also very bad because you're discounting and taking away a lot of the complexities that we take for granted from the back end. Ain't nobody in the right mind would think of adding a noob user, if you will, into a data warehouse. You just don't, because it's literally pulling the pin and handing them the grenade and hoping to God that they're not going to blow their head off. That's what Fabric does. It gives you an infinite armory with ways to really hurt yourself. It's extremely powerful. And with great power comes great responsibility, but the guardrails are lacking. There are so many things in Fabric that is a great idea, but the implementation is still lacking. It's been 2 years. There are
Mm,
a lot of stuff that needs to get their shit in order because Fabric is not new anymore. So I like the idea of Fabric. a lot of the implementations frustrates me to no end. I would like to just scream at the people that prioritize Copilot everything in front of solving basic functionality. It is absolutely not enterprise ready, and I will happily have a conversation with anyone who disagrees because there are so many basic security functionality that simply isn't there. It is going to be
Mm.
amazing, but it's also not gonna be amazing for quite a while. So, back to your original question, yes, I think it can definitely be used as a one-stop shop to do prototyping. You can do amazing things with Fabric as long as you know the limitations, and as long as you do not forget governance. Governance is probably the single most important aspect of Fabric because it is so powerful.
Yeah, and but one friend of me told me a term I didn't knew before, like minimum viable governance, like also like minimum viable product, but minimum viable governance was meant. Okay, let the people do something in some environment, and then watch it, and then you can challenge your ideas about governance and make governance really matters, and yeah, adjust also the governance like to, as a response to what the people are doing, instead of just setting like more theoretical guardrails that people ignore and do their Excel stuff again. I know it's hard, and it's also, yeah, the people like us who, I also like a computer guy from the start, and I never have chosen the job to talk with people.
Mhm,
But now the role changes, like, okay, I cannot just build a pipeline and build a data model. I need to monitor what the people are doing, and identifying some bottlenecks, talk with the people, what's actually the case, and then
mhm.
optimize the governance, optimize the architecture. So it's a whole different job profile for the
It
data
is,
people.
and you're definitely on to the thing that most people miss. Uh, what does governance mean? Well, if you ask 10 people, you're gonna get 12 different answers, and most of them are gonna go, "Well, governance is what keeps me from doing my job." Then you've implemented governance wrong because governance is about enablement. But in order to
Mm,
be enabling, you need to understand the problem space. And here comes the real kicker. It's not a static situation. Everything changes. So governance is an ongoing process, continuously ongoing process. And if you keep developing governance, and if you can show your users that if they butt up against a perceived issue, and you listen to them and go, "Oh, yeah, that's a good point. We need to tweak the governance." Then it turns into trust again. Because if they
mm,
trust you as an administrator, then we're start to cook for real.
yeah, I
It's all
think
about trust. And how do you get
yeah.
trust? People, talk to people.
Yeah, then this is a very good point, because I think this is how governance can be trusted, and like not. I really hate this, like governance projects where you at the first you meet, make a great meeting with many people,
Mm,
only a few of them actually use the data, but everyone is sitting in a room, and because of political reasons they need to be there. They talk a lot, and nothing is decided. They talk about wording and about naming conventions, and nobody actually. I don't say that naming conventions are unnecessary. They are necessary, but they should be like created by the people who actually do the job, and not by like some working cycles of people who, yeah, just have some status and role. But
for sure. I mean, if we could eliminate most of the political shenanigans from everything, it would be much easier. But sadly, that's not the world we live in. But also, what I find with governance is it is extremely difficult to put the genie back in the bottle. We
mm,
saw
yeah,
rampant self-service with Power BI. That scared me. I mean, I spent many nights, sleepless nights, thinking about the amount of damage that people can do with Power BI, unchecked Power BI. And then came Fabric, and everything just went orders of magnitude worse. So you need to have as you put it, a minimally viable governance structure. So at least you can stop people from killing themselves instantly. Yes,
Mm,
it's fine if they shoot themselves in the foot or the hand, but don't enable them to shoot themselves in the head the first thing they do. Because
yeah.
what happens with Fabric is it's so easy to scale up and down. And suddenly you're gonna find yourself in a situation where Fabric is pretty darn expensive.
Yeah, but I'm still quite optimistic about Fabric because you mentioned, of course, we're missing some one security. I'm still waiting for this. When
Mhm.
it will be there. So for me also, it's like not all including enterprise platform so far, but for me it's extremely valuable. Like at the business side, like have something close to Power BI and but still more monitorable, like with more capabilities of doing stuff. So really believe it already can, yeah, make the business self-service users even more productive and more effective. Um, of course, you have to teach a little bit. You have to have some governance in place. I totally agree, but yeah, it's also valuable for me. It's like Excel, but thought to the end, like Excel with some yeah environment and
So
platform around
Fabric
it.
is what Power Query was for Excel. Fabric
Yes,
is for Power BI, I think. And
this is good.
when when Fabric came out, so go even further back, there was something called what was it? The data marts, Power BI data marts. I was shown Power BI data marts long before it was a thing. That's one of the good things about being an MVP. I get to see stuff before it's released. The bad thing about being an MVP is that I can't talk about them, which kind of sucks. But I was shown this a lot of together with a lot of the MVPs when it was just an idea, and it was
Mm,
almost unanimously voted the stupidest idea ever. Everybody said this is not going to work, and Microsoft said, yeah, no," and still did it. If you'd asked me 4 years ago, before Fabric came out, if I stood by that statement, I would have absolutely said yes, because you cannot put this kind of power in the hands of users. They're going to hurt themselves, and we're not going to get anywhere closer to solving business problems. In many ways, I'm equal parts frustrated and happy that Power BI evolved into Fabric. I would not have done it that way. I do not think Fabric is the right way of doing things, but it absolutely has upended my view of things, and that was a good thing. It clearly I needed to get a slap in the face to realize that there are other ways of doing things. I was just as stuck in my ways as anybody else was. So I don't think Fabric is the end game, but I think Fabric is a very, very good way of forcing us to rethink what data warehousing and business intelligence is. And to come back to what you said, yes, I definitely think that at the end of the day, if we can push this power closer to the users, it is going to be messy. It is going to be horrible, but it is also, I think, the only way forward, because it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about the business. It's about making things. If you're in a company that makes bananas, nobody cares about your data warehouse. You just want to produce more bananas. And we tend to forget that in the IT space. We tend to think that what we do is the important
yeah.
stuff, and it isn't. We are a support function and should act accordingly.
Yeah, it's not about objective quality or some, yeah, quality matrix you set yourself. It's finally it's about relevance,
Yeah.
relevance of data to make a decision. This is what everything's about. If an Excel can do it faster and more trustful, people will use it. When they can get the same Excel faster because of Fabric, it's great. Uh, if not, okay, then it's just some IT fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, for me
which
also
is
that
fine itself, as long
and
as you're
the
aware that's the case.
what was funny is hearing you talking about data marts because I also have an opinion about it. I was in small and middle-sized companies at this time when data marts came out, and I thought it was a great thing at the first glance because I really spent a lot of time of yeah, grabbing data from APIs with data
Mhm,
flows, and when it was too large, I had to do some really dirty stuff like to have some split some data flows into two and part data flows that do not refresh, and just add everything to a semantic model. And data marts seemed so much cleaner for me, like in this small business context when you have a few data guys who are really good, it's
mhm.
fantastic. But I've also seen, okay, a corporate used data marts on scale, and this was not a good idea. They ended up like recreating them every month, and
Yeah,
they are so happy to have the warehouses now, even if partly Fabric also is in preview. But they told me I will never, never, ever I will use a feature in preview after the experience with data marts. Yeah.
that's an interesting conversation in and of itself, depending or simply because of the way that Microsoft views previews, and
Mm.
I think that is a very poorly chosen word because it implies that it's not gonna work, which is usually not the case when you're in a public preview. Then it usually works, it just needs some time to finish. Uh, but your experience with data marts really drives home the point that if you look at data marts from a Power BI perspective, then it's an increase in capability. It solves a
Mm.
specific problem for you.
Yeah.
But if you look at data marts from a backend perspective, then it is a hideous, horrible idea because
Yeah.
you see all the ways it can break.
Yeah.
And it comes down to perspectives again. It's not good or bad. It's different, and you need to be reminded which hat you're wearing at any specific point in time. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a very good thing. And I still like look at Fabric like, okay, it's Excel or SharePoint that I can monitor. So this makes me feel quite happy about it.
that's the sticker.
Yeah.
Fabric, Excel or SharePoint that I can monitor. I would put that on my laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're already way over time. It's so interesting to talk with you and see all the different facets of data. Yeah, for the sake of having snackable podcasts, I think, yeah, we're coming to an end, and we as it was a refreshing, good thing not to talk about AI these days so much because everyone is talking about AI. But still, as we are coming to an end, especially because you told you're not good at actually building front ends.
Mhm.
So, do you expect AI and this vibe coding could change really the work, the style of work with data? Like you just say, okay, I want it this way, and the Copilot or anyone else, Claude, ChatGPT is just building the front end for you, or do you think this is yeah not
Uh,
sustainable?
no, I don't believe for a second that, um, LLMs in their current forms will be able to produce good dashboards and reports. Just 100% no. Look at the stuff that, Alberto Cairo is doing, Marco Russo, Kurt Bueller. They all pretty much say the same thing, that no, you're not gonna be your job is not in danger if you do a report design these days. Simply not. But and I'm not a huge LLM fan per se. I find 95% of all the LLM AI on LinkedIn to be pure bullshit. But having said that, the stuff that Kurt is doing with MCPs, connecting them to a data model, I definitely think that he's on to something there. But in the words of Mark Lelyfelt, it's essentially just Q&A, Power BI Q&A with a slightly more clever engine. But it all comes back to, if your data model is crap, you're not going to be able to extract any information from the model, regardless if you're doing KPIs or if you're trying to talk to it. So I think it might be one option for a interface to a data set. Yes, I am not convinced it's going to be the end all for all interfaces, but it might turn out to be a tool
Mm.
that is useful for some people.
Yeah, like you do not need to build a dashboard for just one question, one ad hoc analysis. You maybe don't
Exactly.
have to do.
Exactly. And that that
Mm.
that is a good point, because we're back to, what are you using the report for? Most people get stuck on building the report, but they fail to answer the question, what action do I want to drive? And before you can answer that, well, you need to understand your business process. And if you know what action you want to drive, then explain to me how visualizing this data can drive the action. If you can do that, then we can talk about getting there. But I find that 9 times out of 10, people say, we want to see your report. No, they don't. They want to see a KPI, and that's it. And ain't nobody want to talk to their data. There are specific use cases where you're doing exploration of your data. Then it might make sense to talk to it through
Mm.
MCPs or not. But it is such a rare occurrence, I think. So it's more of an edge case and more of a novelty. And we're back to, it's more an interface to your information.
Yeah, and so we will see. So the future will still bring, hopefully, one security and more governance features to Fabric, and also I think the AI stuff and Copilot will evolve too. Yeah, if we want or not, I think everything has potential in this space, and we'll see
I
you
agree.
again. And also, yeah, hard recommendation for Data Minds Connect. Visit the workshop of Alexander and Valerie. I'm sure it will be awesome.
I sincerely hope so,
And,
and I will definitely be there.
yeah. So thanks for the longer podcast episode, and yeah, maybe meet again, Alexander.
I
See
hope
you.
so.
Thanks.